EditMate is a video platform that basically acts as the video department for your team, whether you're a marketing team, an employer branding team, or talent acquisition team. We basically operate as your dedicated video department, helping you create video content for all of your internal and external marketing and communications channels. So every organization now needs video for all of their channels, and we help them do that. So we work with all kinds of businesses, whether it's retail like Dick's Sporting Goods, to ad tech like the Trade Desk, to hospitality like Travel and Leisure Co., as well as small businesses and some individual content creators as well. Basically giving them a streamlined system and a way to create lots of video content, and doing the hard work for them as their video editing service, with a project management software that streamlines the whole process, and also with tools that help you crowdsource video clips from your real community like your employees. So we've done a lot of work in the HR and the employer branding space in recent years, because as a lot of consumer brands have known for a long time, is that people trust people, not brands, and they really want to hear from your real employees, giving an authentic view about what working at your company is like, sort of mimicking the natural word of mouth marketing, but doing it on a larger scale with video. So with EditMate, you can upload any kind of footage, whether it's Zoom recordings, video shot on an iPhone, professionally shot that you want to repurpose, and we'll cut that into content for you to share. So when I saw Nicole do her presentation at RecFest in Nashville, earlier in the fall, I just absolutely loved it, because instead of sort of giving like sort of simple tips and tricks or hacks, it sort of gives you all these ideas that really elevate your employees' experience, and will sort of make them into natural brand ambassadors and employer brand advocates for your company. And it sort of runs the whole gamut of the employee experience, their whole life cycle. And that's from when they're researching job descriptions, to getting onboarded, to their day-to-day experience working with you, all the way to when they've left and they're alumni of your company. Her presentation sort of gives you tips about how to elevate that experience for your employees and really make a wonderful work environment, both on an individual level and for your company culture as a whole. So I'll hand it over to Nicole. She works in recruitment marketing at Floor Decor, and has had a long career in the recruitment marketing, employer branding, and talent acquisition space. So she's a true expert. So I'm excited to hand it over to her today. And if you have any questions, you can pop it in the chat box and we'll answer them at the end. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Rachel. All right, we're going to test my tech skills right now. Okay. All right. So we're talking about 13 ways, right, to elevate your employer brand. And the great thing about these ideas is that you can literally start today. So I'll just hop right in and share with you. I'm actually going to pause this video because I want to tell you a story about when I was giving this presentation in Serbia last month. I had a video because, as Rachel just said, kind of video content is king. And I had a whole plan on how I was going to start the presentation. And, it had one intro and one area of focus around budget. And then I was going to lead into all of these free kind of sources of inspiration and ideas. And I found out right before the first person got on stage, and I was second, that the videos were not working because they didn't, accept the format that I had submitted the slides in. And so I had to sit through one person's presentation and think, how am I going to completely adjust my presentation to 600 people, literally internationally, and come up with something that's kind of captivating. And the first person did such a good job. And I was sitting there like, oh my gosh, what do I say? What do I say? And I just thought back to something I'd seen literally the day before while scrolling Facebook mindlessly. And that's how I'm going to start this with you all today. So I saw a post And it was a screenshot from like a Ring camera of someone's kids playing Ding Dong Ditch, where, you ring a doorbell and you run away. And I remember like scrolling through the comments, and they were so polarizing, and people had such strong thoughts. And my thought wasn't what I would do as a homeowner. It was, I would never, I would never have even thought about doing that as a kid. And why this is relevant is because as a child, I was raised in a really, really strict household. My parents are wonderful, but they were and are super, super strict. And so the question, what if, wasn't one of curiosity or wonder or even like excitement. It came from a place of like fear and concern in the unknown. So I would never have asked myself as a kid, oh, what if I were to ring doorbells and run away, because I didn't want to get in trouble. So it never would have occurred to me to do that because of how I viewed the answer to the question, what if? I didn't want to find out. And I think that's where, as employer branders and HR professionals, we sometimes get stuck because we ask the question, what if? And it comes from a place of fear or concern. And really, it should come from a place of curiosity and excitement and anticipation when we think, what if? So, what if we? And that's what today's, talk is based on. So we are going to fly through these together and really ask ourselves, so what is an advocate? We talk a lot about brand advocacy. That's always a hot topic in employer brand, but really, what is it? And this is what it's not. These are copies and pastes from a library, and these are what I would call program participants. So program participants, like I just said, they're people who cut and paste. And sometimes that's the maturity level of your organization, and that's how far you can get. And sometimes you can push a lot further. It's up to you, your knowledge, your skill set, your interest level, and that of the company as well. But what we're looking to do is build true brand advocates, which are very different from program participants. So 23% per a Gallup global poll a few months ago report being engaged at work. And that's a huge issue as we look at how do we engage candidates, how do we engage employees, and how do we create those true brand advocates. So in order to kind of solve how do we create brand advocates, we really need to understand, well, what contributes to building brand advocates. And it's not a library of copy and paste content. It's all of these things and so much more. Values, work environment, communication styles, meeting culture. It's all those little things that make up your day-to-day that really affect whether people will advocate for working at your company. So we're going to fly through a bunch of examples. Like Rachel said, feel free to put any comments in the chat, and hopefully these inspire you like they inspired me. So the first is from a company called Plain, and their career site is fantastic because they keep it very simple. There's a ton of white space, and they answer questions like, what's your goal with Plain? What are you happy about? And then they dive into what's something you're less happy about and what's the biggest mistake you've made since starting the company. So these founders are not only sharing, the good, hey, we've done this and we won this award and we're doing this work, but they're proactively sharing, yeah, we've made mistakes and here's how we've pivoted. And further down their site, it lists why you should and shouldn't join. So they are hyper specific about knowing what kind of person with what traits and personality traits and, skill sets will thrive at Plain and who might be happier elsewhere. So I think that is such a huge opportunity because a lot of us play it really safe on our career site, and this is an opportunity to get specific. 2 is behind the scenes. So Duolingo does a great job, and I was on a call the other day with their talent brand leader, and she said, yeah, we really just kind of make things up, and we're very open to trying new things because if it's terrible, we'll just delete it. And I think that kind of what if is something that we can all take as well. So just trying things. So they're here sharing a post from an employee talking about what product managers do all day at Duolingo in a specific project. And then the brand shared it and then asks a question to product managers to get them engaged. So it's really simple, but it's really effective. Going on to behind the scenes, these are screen grabs from an employee at Sherwin-Williams from about 4 years ago and an employee at Waffle House. Hopefully you all are familiar with Waffle House. And these employees were both fired due to their activity on social media. They had really engaging video content, and their companies got a ton of backlash for not understanding that they were getting a ton of free publicity. And they were really popular videos and engaging. And, they fired these employees. So it's really time that companies and we as the employer branders at companies and HR professionals stand up for the positive impact that these employees are having versus being scared and firing them. 3 is candidate packs. And I find these a little bit more popular in Europe than the States for some reason, but maybe that's because I'm at a huge company. And this is a great example from Lego. So they use the word adventure. You're looking up, it's outside, it's a tree, it's big, it's bold. And then they have enter in the bottom right corner. So they're really showing and telling the sense of adventure, and it gets you excited as a candidate. Especially if you're interviewing at other places without candidate packs, it's that differentiator that really sets this company apart and makes you want to work there. This is another candidate pack from a company in Europe. And what I like about this is they get really tactical. So think about a time where you came with a question and it wasn't answered and you didn't know where to go because you were new and you didn't know anyone. And they get very specific. What should I wear? Do I need to bring anything? And if you've never wondered what to wear in an interview, I want your confidence or your closet, because we've all asked ourselves that. What's the vibe? Is it casual? Is it formal? Should I overdress for the interview? And they get really specific, saying the team you'll be meeting will be wearing jeans and t-shirts. So that alleviates stress so that you, as the candidate, can focus on the interview versus your outfit. 4 is a handbook. So we're still kind of moving from that candidate to employee experience. And you're saying, you're getting back to that tactical kind of answering. So what if I screw up? Valve is a fascinating company with no hierarchy. So there's not a single manager, there's no VP. Every single person is kind of equal at Valve, and you structure your own days, and they've been really successful with that layout. So the question would arise, especially for, type A people like myself, well, what if I mess up? No one's there to tell you as your manager that you've messed up. So what does that look like? What does a mistake look like? And they even go so far as to say even expensive mistakes or ones which result in a very public failure are genuinely looked at as opportunities to learn. So they have your back and they make it clear that even if it's public, even if it's expensive, they look at your mistakes as a learning opportunity. And for me, going into a company that's so upfront and intentional about how they support you is a really big differentiator. Here's another handbook from HubSpot. And what I love about this is it calls out it's part who we are and part who we aspire to be. So they're really taking ownership of, this is who we are and here's where we're going. So come on this journey with us. And if we're not there yet, we'll call it out. So that level of transparency is huge. 5, this is one that I was just talking with someone about the other week, and they said, I haven't heard of README, and it's a term that I only recently learned. So call it a user manual, call it a README, call it an onboarding guide, call it whatever you would like. But this is a great opportunity to get to know employees when they first onboard. So we've probably all had, coworkers or managers who have habits that, we would prefer they didn't, or communication styles that don't quite align with what we prefer. And what I love about this is it's proactive. So you can avoid down the road saying, oh my gosh, it really bothers me when you do XYZ, because you've set the expectation. Here's how I like to communicate. Here are my best times of day when I'm most productive, etc. And these are obviously super customizable to whatever you prefer. And I'm going to pause here because these 13 ideas are great, but what I anticipate people thinking as they're listening to this is, I don't control our career site, or I don't manage our social media. We have a team who does that. Or I can't just create a candidate pack, that would never get buy-in. And I've been in a huge organization. I've worked at tiny orgs, and I hear that feedback. But the great thing about this is you can send Duolingo's social to your team. I'm sure they're already aware of it, but just say, hey, I love this tactic. Is this something we've considered in the past, or could we? And just come from a place of curiosity, like I'm sure you already do, and try to partner with teams to provide influence and shifts, like mindset shifts, to get closer to what can be really impactful for your organization. As well, things like READMEs or user manuals are 100% things that you can control, because you don't have to have an enterprise-wide adoption. You can just start doing that for your team, and it's very likely that word of mouth will spread and other people will start adopting it for their teams as well. Number 6 is meeting culture. So this is an ode to a team at Microsoft who has a rubber chicken called Ralph. And what they do is kind of what, we did in kindergarten, and whoever's holding Ralph is the one who can speak. And what I love about this is it's just fun. It's kind of a throwback, and it really shakes your day up when you're going from meeting to meeting, and then you have a meeting with Ralph. It's just something little, something different. And what I also love about it is that if you are sitting in a meeting and one person is holding a rubber chicken, you not only have that audible, oh my gosh, this person's been talking for the last 10 minutes and it's a 30-minute meeting, but you have kind of an easy way to say, hey, so-and-so hasn't had Ralph, instead of saying, hey, so-and-so hasn't gotten a chance to speak. I think it's just a more fun, kind of lighthearted, easy way to say, hey, like throw Ralph over here, versus please stop talking. So not all of these have to be monumental. They can be really small ways to build advocates, because you can bet that if people go to a meeting at a company like Microsoft with a rubber chicken, they're going to talk about it. Number 7 is policies. So this is way less fun, but it's honestly really huge. I worked at a company in HR where I couldn't find the employee handbook, and I looked for over 2 hours. I then enlisted 2 colleagues to help me and said, do you know where the employee handbook is? They both looked and they couldn't find it. So that obviously was a hugely negative experience. I did tell people about it, especially working in HR, and shared my frustrations with how we were organized or not organized. So even something as simple as organizing your policies and making them easy to read and understand, and having a clear email at the bottom, with who to ask questions to, can be really impactful. I know it's boring, but sometimes boring is an opportunity. Number 8 is innovation time. So I'm sure you're all familiar with Google's innovation time. They're 10%. 3M had one as well, and that is where the Post-it came from, which is a pretty infamous story, as well as things like Google Map and Gmail. So this is another great example of, if you don't have the authority to say, hey, our company is going to test or pilot, a 5% innovation time enterprise-wide, maybe that's not the best way to do it. Maybe you should just try it on your team. And the great thing about this is you don't have to make a big announcement. You can just try, hey, take 5%, work on some projects, let's regroup and talk about how it went, and if we want to scale this or share it, or scrap it. So I love this example because it can really be modified to fit the needs of your team and your company. And who knows what can come from it that you all can share externally and really build that employer brand reputation. Number 9 is recognition opportunities. So this is from a company called Change Engine, and it's just basically an alternative to Canva or PowerPoint, and you can put in different, events, images, image styles, text tones, and they will just populate a little digital card for you. And one of the areas I think a lot of companies miss or don't put enough weight on is recognition and appreciation. Across my entire career, that's been one of the themes that every company has called out on internal surveys, external, sentiment sites. So don't sleep on small, easy ways to recognize people and just say, hey, if you're not a graphic designer or you don't want to take the time, send an email, or here's an easy way to create, a pretty e-card to thank someone. Number 10 is salary transparency, and Buffer is one of my favorite examples across all of employer brand. I highly recommend you take a look when you have time. So they have an entire blog post and an updated post when they change their policies on how they decide salaries. So not only on how they decide salaries, but every single person's salary. So if you really, really want, you can go see how much the CEO of Buffer makes. You can go see how much anyone makes, and you can read about how they get to those determinations and what, the differences between levels. So what I love about this is not only are they transparent and you don't have to guess on a call with a recruiter what the salary range would be, but if their salaries are this transparent, you can expect the work to be that transparent too, which is something I love. So as a candidate, this is an opt-in or opt-out. Do you want people to be able to see your salaries? Do you want people to be able to know what you're working on at all times? Because that's the kind of vibe that this company gives off. Some people are a hard yes, and some people are a hard no. And that's what we're all aiming for in employer brand. Number 11 is surprise and delight. And this is a fantastic example from Tesco across the pond, who, when England was in the finals a couple months ago, put out this kind of announcement on social. It said, every fan helps. And instead of thanking their customers, which is what 90, I think, +% of brands would do, they thanked their employees and just said, you guys are awesome. You work so hard every day, and we're closing our stores across the country so that you can be wherever you want to, be with friends and family to cheer on England as they hopefully win the finals. Thank you for all of your hard work. And I think we underestimate, especially with, frontline employees sometimes, how much that, again, appreciation and time off really, really makes a difference. And you will have people sharing with their friends, yeah, my company gave me the time off. Then those friends will become interested and say, where do you work? Because I don't have the day off. So again, don't sleep on things like this either. And the positioning is really crucial because they came across really authentic. And I think this probably had a huge effect with employees. Number 12 is an intern yearbook. This came from a conversation. I wish I could remember whose idea it was, but essentially every summer they compile pictures of their interns and do a quick, snippet on like where they're from, what they're studying, and what department they're interning in. And I think you can even replicate that at the end of the summer if you want to do superlatives, have them do that for each other. You can also send them to, you can do a video version. I think that would be really fun. And obviously Gen Z, Gen Alpha would be all about that. And then, send it out to your company and encourage people to connect with people in different departments or people from their alma mater. So I think this idea has a lot of legs and personalization for what would work for your company. And then lastly, alumni. This is an idea that I absolutely love from Innocent Drinks Company. And if you go back to thinking about when you were looking at colleges, or maybe you have kids looking at colleges, one of the main things or big things that colleges and universities highlight is their alumni, and they love to brag about them and show them off. And that's not something companies really ever do, because the thinking is, oh, they left. Well, yes, they left, but they were so prepared to be successful in their next step because of, or in part because of their time at your company. So Innocent Drinks just turned that on its head and said, we're going to celebrate our alumni. And they have an entire page where they just have 2 to 3 sentences about some of their successful alumni. And it really kind of shows an appreciation for past employees and their time there and celebrating their success instead of, some companies will almost villainize people when they leave and blame things on them. And they really take a different approach. So, all right, flying through here. In review, a couple resources I would highly recommend checking out are Valve's Employee Handbook. It is not to be missed. Plain's career site is a really quick thing to check out. And then Buffer's Salary Transparency blog. So I'm going to stop sharing.
Nice.
Tried to run through that really quickly, but hopefully those ideas provided some inspiration, a reminder that you do have control over more than you think, and testing it in your own environment or team or department is a great way to start really building those brand advocates and go above and beyond program participants.
Cool. Thank you so much, Nicole. That was great. So I got a couple of messages in the chat as well as through DMs. So I'm just gonna throw those at you quickly.
Yeah.
So the first one is, will this recording be anywhere? And yes, it will. I'll share this with everyone who registered, and we'll also have it in the webinar section of the EditMate website and on our YouTube. So you'll definitely get a copy of that. We also cut it up into little highlight clips, so you can get shortened versions as well. The second question is for you, Nicole. Is there anything that you're looking to implement either from your list here or something else that you've been thinking of at your own company that you're working with now in 2025? Sort of like what's on your strategy list for the next year?
Yeah, I love this question. So thank you to the person who asked it. There are two. So I've always wanted to get my hands on the career site and kind of have carte blanche. And I'm very fortunate to be in a position now where that has essentially been given. So I'm constructing from scratch what I think, a candidate flow would make sense, adding some FAQs and tips, for people that are tactical and helpful. And I'm really kind of curious to see how that evolves in like staging mode. And I'm really looking to make that like a very helpful site. In the or at the EMPL conference I mentioned last month, someone from Sweden did a great job and talked about making their career site an LMS. So somewhere that you'd come and learn and also be able to apply to jobs. And I thought for that company, that was such a unique idea, and have it be like a landing page of learning. Oh, and also at the same time, it's a place where people can apply. So that's not right for us, but for them, I thought that was a really cool idea. The other idea I've talked about before, so I really have just got to do it at some point. But I'd love to see an entire month of content on social media that features employees. So there's no corporate post that's just like we, blah, blah, blah. Everything is an employee video. For the most part, I struggle to think of something that wouldn't probably be a video. But if it's recognition month, you have that employee sharing what's important to them. If you have a new product launch, you have an employee involved in the launch sharing how it came to be. If you have, event that you're in an event that you're attending, you have an employee talking about why you're attending that event, or showcasing what you'll be sharing at the event. So it's not corporate speak, it's a whole month of employees talking about what you're doing at work.
Awesome. And then the next question was, what is something that you as a candidate or as an employee during your career at any point you experienced that really built brand affinity for you, for that company, whether you got the job or not? What was something that really stood out to you when you were in the candidate seat?
Yeah. Oh, that's a fun question. I don't think I've ever been asked that. But I do have an answer. I was interviewing maybe a year ago with a company in Germany, and the role would have been in Germany, and the interviewer was British, and we had a great conversation. And I asked a question, I can't remember what exactly, but I said, would this role be doing XYZ? And I was like, I'm not really looking to do more of that in my career. I can't remember exactly what that was. And he was like, yeah, actually, you'd need to do a lot of it. I need someone to come in, clean up all the, shit and be able to get that done so that I can worry about what I need to worry about. So I need like a cleanup person. And I just remember thinking, very first of all, like, wow, I can't believe you were willing to say that. But also, thank you for saying that because that's not like the role that I'm interested in. So, like, we are able to, part ways happily on good terms, just realizing that I wasn't the right fit for this role. But most interviewers aren't willing to say, for that role, yeah, I need someone to come in and clean up. Okay. Well, you can find someone absolutely who's looking for that kind of work, but it's not me. And I don't know that I've experienced like that level of candor before. So I didn't take that as a negative. I actually really appreciated it.
Yeah, well, awesome. So I got two other quick questions. So the first one, hopefully there's nothing that is actually keeping you up at night. But in your role now, at your company, or really in the, recruitment marketing space in general, is there anything that you're kind of worried about and foresee as an issue, and that you hope the kind of larger space and the people sort of are able to tackle it, and whether that's specific to America or just sort of the new generations coming up in the workforce? What's something that you're sort of like worried about and trying to work through?
Well, I don't think I hate to say this, but I don't think we can ignore AI. Like at some point, I think we need to figure out what that integration looks like. But I almost think like we're getting ahead of ourselves a little bit because there's so much stuff not related to AI that like we can't even figure out. And a lot of conversations are revolving around like complex ideas with, AI. And I'm like, well, we're like, we need to crawl and then we can run later. So at some point, I think 2025, I'll want to really dive in to understand how we can leverage some basics of AI. But I wanted to touch upon that because I know that's a huge one for a lot of people. For me, I would say what keeps me up industry wise is the lack of focus on retention and engagement because that Gallup number of 23 has not changed a lot over the last couple of years. Well, actually, a lot of years. And like we know that it costs billions of dollars for companies every year. Like we know that people are quitting, they're quiet quitting, whatever you want to call it. Like we've had so many terms, but people need to be engaged at work. They want to be recognized and all the things we just talked about. And I just I don't know that a lot of companies buy into that. So we have TA people being laid off when they could easily be kind of their role could be repurposed to focus more on retention, to balance out that attraction that we focus so much on. So that I think is my kind of hope and what, I'm always working on in the companies that I'm at, is working with stakeholders, understand like how can we focus more on retention because it's costing companies a ton of money. And it's been the same for years. And I'm missing something on why we're not spending more time on it.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's a big concern, especially with everyone's budget sort of a little bit apprehensive at the moment. That's a big
Mhm.
thing to focus on.
Yeah.
And the last question was, are there any employer brands that you sort of admire or kind of like have a crush on from afar? I know you mentioned like Buffer and lots of examples in your presentation, but if there are any other ones, I know we work with Travel and Leisure Co. and help them create a lot of video content. And sometimes I watch the videos and I'm like, oh man, maybe I should just go work for Travel and Leisure. Like it really sells it for me. It seems like a really awesome, fun place to work. Do you have anything like that?
Yeah, that's funny. Maybe I should go work for my client.
Yeah.
Um, Yes, I mean a couple that I mentioned, like planes, I think is great. Buffers as well. Valves I find really interesting, and I can't figure out whether I would love or hate a place with no hierarchy, but I love how like open and transparent they are. So I would say any companies that are like open and transparent are kind of where I draw a lot of inspiration from and try to kind of emulate as much as I can. Um, and then I mentioned HubSpot. And another reason that I like HubSpot from afar, actually, I don't know anyone who works there, I don't think, but their former CHRO, who recently left, Katie Burke, was super active on social media. And I have such a love hate with social, but she would share what they were doing a lot. Like, oh, we're at this meeting, we're talking about X. She would be congratulating employees a lot and like lifting up her employees a ton, which I think is more rare than, sometimes we want to acknowledge. And I just love that there was so much, again, like kind of transparency about what they're working on there. So, and it seemed like a really supportive culture. And then she talked about their benefits, which seemed pretty great. So from what I saw and like how she interacted with people online, it didn't seem like she was a C-suite that had someone managing her social. It really seemed like she was investing those couple minutes, a couple times a week to support and champion and like educate. And I just thought, I love that. And I love that someone in that position with that much stress and pressure is taking time out to say, hey, my employee on this team did something great and y'all should know about it.
Oh,
So to me,
awesome.
that like contributes a lot to their employer brand.
Yeah, definitely. And it like I talked about in the beginning, it's like you people trust people, not just the brand. So even having the person behind the scenes representing the brand, it comes across as a lot more authentic and real and sort of instantaneous when sharing on social media. So that's a really great
Exactly.
insight. Well, thank you so much, Nicole, and thank you for everyone for joining us today.